Well, this is so nice. Thanks for having us in your office.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
You have a bone to pick.
I have a big bone to pick with someone.
What
Allegedly,
do you do?
somebody fell asleep during my
I bought some walking tacos just for this.
fell asleep during my town hall meeting recently.
Yeah, that I
Like
mean,
drooling, snoring.
that is not true. I did not drool or
I have the
snore.
evidence.
You have evidence.
I
We
do
have
have
Did you
witnesses.
evidence.
really take pictures?
I have evidence.
Shoot.
But because I'm kind-hearted, they have not gone public.
Ah,
And they shall never see the light of day.
Oh, wow.
or so we're
Well,
told.
this interview better go well. is
Yeah.
what You're telling us.
That's all I can say.
Oh my
All
God.
right. Well,
But I do forgive you.
Thank you. I do apologize. But those were good sandwiches, and I ate a lot of them. And so
So it's the sandwich fault.
it 100% it's the sandwiches.
it's the teachers' union's fault.
yeah,
No, I think you were bored.
yeah. I wasn't actually bored. I think those meetings, in all seriousness, even though they're long and sometimes they repeat information, the fact that like people get to ask questions, I mean, sometimes new stuff comes up and that level of community engagement is good, as why you're doing it 4 times. I mean, obviously, right?
More than 4, but yes.
Yeah.
So there was a recent town hall, I think just
Last night?
last night. What do you think is sort of a question or a confusion that many people still have about this referendum? I mean, there's a reason you're doing multiples of these town halls. You want clarity, right?
No, actually, that's not the purpose. They're the exact same presentation, generally the exact same information. We wanted to give folks an opportunity. If you can't make one, you can attend another. If you can't come during the weekday, you have a weekend option. If you have children and want to pay attention at 8 o'clock versus doing all your household stuff, we have an option for the 8 o'clock, 8 p.m. Town hall. So trying to provide different opportunities so that as many of our community partners, members could be engaged and plug in.
And even so, what do you find is something that you really want to communicate to the town, to families ahead of the vote? That's something that, we hear it. There's a lot of confusion about what's a state monitor, how will, so outside of that, what is just something you really want to clarify?
I really, really want to clarify and underscore what's at stake. And I really mean that, come March 10th, regardless, whether folks are for the yes, yes camp or the no, no camp, I really want us to think about when we cast a vote, just be clearly aware of how we're voting and what the consequences of our votes are. I've been very, very honest and open about every financial information that we have, new developments, anything that, some folks say you've gone public too soon. But again, I promise transparency. So everything is out there. I think that sometimes the lack of confusion comes from external forces, lack of a better word, that I think sometimes with good intentions, trying to provide clarity or explain something that was said. Other times, I think with the intention of creating confusion, that mudders the water. That's why we've been very clear in our written communication and during my board presentation, during the town halls. If there's been times where we needed to go back and correct something because we've learned some, new information, we've done that. So I honestly feel confident that if an individual wants clarity, there's multiple ways to do it. Unlike some folks, you can watch the town hall, pay attention and not fall asleep. You can read our frequently asked questions. We have, as I said, information on our website. So I think anybody who really wants accurate information, as we say, from the horse's mouth, has an opportunity to do that in multiple means. And that's why I'm pretty confident as we head into March 10th that for me, that information is available for anybody who wants to search it out with the intention of understanding the what's, the hows, and things of that sort.
Well, let's imagine it's March 11th then, and let's game this out a little bit. What happens on March 11th if it's a yes, yes? Let's start with that. What does the next period of time look like from your perspective?
Yeah, so March 10th, if we get a yes, yes, they will be, and we've shared that a period of time from the yes vote to the time the town is able to assess taxes, collect the taxes, and then send that revenue over to us. So immediately with a yes, yes, we would look into a tax anticipation note that will help us bridge that time period and allow us to continue our operations as a school district. So that would be the first thing that we would do in terms of securing those financial resources for our district. And then still with a yes vote, we still have to deal with roughly a $3.5 million deficit that we will have to close, right? Because we want a balanced budget, and we want to think about slowly building up our reserves. That's really, really important to me. And that is something I'm committed to doing because it's essential. God forbid we have an emergency, we need to be able to take care of that. And that's what our reserves would allow us to do. So that would be the course of business that would take place if we were to get a yes vote. Again, we're going to provide as much clarity as we can on the 25th. Folks really want absolutes. I get the sense, right? In this scenario, that scenario, so many moving targets. We don't know our state aid yet. There's so many pieces of the puzzle that's missing for me to be able to say affirmatively, this is exactly what's happening. So my intentions on Wednesday is to provide a picture of this is how we're going to eliminate the $3.5 million deficit. And God forbid, if we have to look at the $10.5 million deficit, this is my recommendation again to the board on how we would close that deficit. None of it is good. I mean, we just went through roughly a 2.8 or so $million reduction. We feel it everywhere. And I believe parents feel it everywhere. I can't even imagine a $10 million. It's going to really have a significant impact on us. And even with that, I do believe, I wholeheartedly believe in our ability to recover. It's going to take some time, but and who's going to feel the most pain of that is our children, right? And that's just a fact. No matter how we spin it, we're going to have to make significant reductions under our $10.5 million, which if we're at that point, that means that we also have been assigned a state monitor. So although we could make recommendations to that individual, the decision-making is not necessarily lies with us. We have an individual to consider and what his or her directives are and in what ways, what their philosophy will be and things of that sort. That's another thing we would have to navigate if we did not get a yes vote on March 10th.
What would you say is at stake for the people who will vote on March 10th who don't have any ties to the school district? They don't have children in the school district any longer, if they ever did, and they feel very removed from this crisis, and they're going to take that sentiment to the polls. What is at stake for them in any of these cases? Yes, yes, no, no.
Yeah, so that's a really good question that I don't think I've been asked. So good job.
I don't fall
You
asleep.
can learn.
So it's going to be the worst interview.
My response would be to center the children, right? I firmly believe that our children are the future of any community. And I do believe they're also the strength of that community. So sometimes we can say, I don't have grandkids, I don't have children, I don't have any sort of connection or investment in the school district. I think that's not true. I do believe that a robust, healthy school district attracts and retains families. It's better for our economy, right? It's better for our communities. I'm a firm believer in that. So I think we need to think about, if nothing else, what if I did have children in the school district? What would I want for them, right? The children of our community belong to all of us, whether we bear them or, whatever. So that's just my firm belief in that. And I want people to think about that as they vote. I do believe it's unfortunate that we've had to go to special elections to go beyond the 2% cap. As I said, it was not an easy decision whatsoever. And no superintendent wants to do, certainly not in their first couple of months. That's just a fact. It's complicated. It could be very political. It could be very divisive, as we see in our community. So it's not something you wake up and say, "Oh, great, I'm gonna do this. Everything's gonna work out." So it was absolutely the last resort in which I felt as a superintendent was what I can do to ensure that our students, when they come to any of our schools, are getting the level of education they need and deserve.
Do you have a sense of what the cuts would look like at this point, comparing a $3.5 million versus $10 million cut? I mean, what are we talking about? Can you paint a picture? And not just in terms of staffing, but maybe, getting rid of some real estate. What's on the table at this point in those two scenarios?
Nice try. You'll have to come and tune in on Wednesday.
This is running Thursday after that.
Oh, no, stuff it gets out a lot sooner than that. So what I will say is, and I've said this over and over again, We're looking at $3.5 million, which is significant, but worse would be at $10.5 million. Everything would be on the table. Everything would be on the table. Everything it takes to erase that deficit. Although I struggle with the $3.5 million, I rather struggle with that and deal with that. So we're going to give a clearer picture. Sort of what's at stake. Primarily, I know in the middle you have the yes, no, and no, yes. I can't get to the nitty gritties, but I'm going to give folks an idea because they all kind of lie in the middle of what's at stake with a 3.5 versus a $10.5 million. And again, I don't want people to be surprised because I've said everything is on the table. As I said, I'm willing to have those of us who are here go on carts. I work anyway if it means that we can, get the resources that we need for our schools. Everything's on the table. We're going to, as I said, outline what some of those things would be at risk, either with a $3 million or a $10 million deficit.
What's a cart? Just to explain.
A cart, we'll be like on the go, mobile. We'll just have a little, instead of an office and a stationary desk, we we'll get that radical if it needs be, because again, what I want to avoid at all costs, and I'm not sure if we can, because as many folks know, 75 to 80% of all school districts expenses are staffing. We want to avoid personnel cuts because I sincerely believe, even with the cuts that we instituted in January, our schools are struggling with that. So I'm doing everything I can to avoid reduction in teaching staffing that impacts directly the classrooms, things of that sort. Under $10 million, I'm not sure that could be avoided, but that is what my thought is. Protect, as much of the classroom and schools as possible before having to hit there.
But you've also said that we have to right size, right? Enrollment's been dropping and will probably continue to do so as families have fewer children. And we've done an informal poll here at the pod where we were learning anecdotally, at least parents are looking at private, especially those that have younger kids. And so that's inevitable, right? The classroom cuts.
Right. But that won't be necessary. Yes, absolutely, because it's the responsible right thing to do. That would have happened regardless whether I had a budget deficit or not, because I said you can't continue to have in some places 5, 6, 8 students, right?
Where's that happening, by the way? Parents are like, what?
In various different places.
Okay. Different schools.
And some of them are mostly elective classes. But yeah, they're happening in various different places. Not all places, but in a lot of our places. So that would have happened anyway. So those kind of reductions would have naturally happened, because one of the things is, even if we did not need money from the taxpayers, I do believe in being fiscally responsible and conservative. So that exercise would have happened no matter what. If we continue to see low enrollments, whether we have a deficit or not, we would have eventually, looking at the data, go into a consolidation of schools. It's the responsible thing to do.
Yeah.
But now more than ever, right, we have to be tighter than that. And then under a $10 million, there is a potential that classrooms will increase beyond what I've said in terms of the minimums and some of the maximums, because you get into predicament. $10 million is a lot. If you can't find those efficiencies and cuts elsewhere, generally that's what tends to happen, especially under a state monitor, as we study other places that have had state monitors or currently have a state monitor.
On the 25th, there's also going to be the external auditor is going to give a presentation. Yes. Tell us a little bit about what that's going to be like. That's different from a forensic audit, but what are we going to learn? What kinds of things are we going to learn, to the extent that you can share that with us now?
Absolutely. So your listeners may or may not be aware, every school district has to do an audit of their, we're doing 24, 25, our last years, by an independent auditor that just goes through the financial records, analyzes them, and then writes an audit report. Most of them come with recommendations. And then typically schools then will do a corrective action plan based on what those recommendations for improvements are. So again, this is one of the things where we want to share this information with the public, especially prior to March 10th. So they're still writing their reports, but they will be ready Wednesday. So I don't know much details of that report to be able to share now. As I said, they're not completely done, but they will be ready to present on the 25th and to share the information with the public and our board. But we expect for them, I would say, to share what we've shared, right? Is that There were concerns with some of the record keeping, the organization of the record keeping, overspending, things of that sort. Again, it's not finished yet. I haven't seen it, but I would anticipate that they would highlight the same things. And I would not be surprised if the corrective action plan would probably be nothing of that. I don't believe would surprise us. The good thing is that when we notify the state of our deficit and we're working with a state appointed partner to verify and to work with us, a part of our corrective action plan to the state also included some of the changes we've made and are going to make. So we anticipate that we'll probably just be able to pull the same information. But again, we don't know yet until we've analyzed and read the report. And then once we develop a correction action plan, we will share that with the board and the public.
Any preliminary results on the family survey, the survey that you asked for families to take to list their priorities for the 2026-2027 budget? Are there any themes that are recurring, any patterns you're seeing in what parents are prioritizing?
Yeah, I feel like it greatly aligns with my thinking and value in the sense that the importance of protecting core instruction, making sure that all our students have what they need academically to succeed. It aligned with that. It wasn't anything really surprising. I think that families want their students, their children, to get a good education and to have a well-rounded education. So none of that really surprises. Again, we'll also share in greater detail the results of that survey, how many individuals responded to that survey, and give all the information we can in terms of the results of the survey.
In terms of the forensic audit that's scheduled for this summer, what is the difference between, I guess, the audit that you're going through right now and the forensic audit? And I ask that in the context of statements that you've made, like there's no missing money, right? And we know, and which means like nobody like stole cash, I assume, right? There's no hole in a bank account in terms of that. But we don't know about the bidding process. We don't know about whether there's any self-dealing potentially, or, why was our baseball field so expensive and they decided to put turf in the outfield? Things like that people talk about,
Yeah, I think the bond referendum I'm not concerned about. And then we also have a company that's working with us to ensure that process is followed. So I don't really have concerns about the bond referendum directly. To your point, I'm just saying I don't. Like, I think that's been, from our perspective, like there's a process that the state has set for bidding. You can't go around that. But to your point, we did not find any money missing. I would anticipate, because I think it would alert us, our auditors also perhaps did not find any money missing. The individual that was working with us from the state in reviewing all the financial records didn't find any money missing. So the forensic audit will be a deeper dive than year of the end independent audit. So again, we still have to develop that scope, because it could be a rabbit hole. You can add everything to it. We can't. Number one, the expense will grow. So we have to be very clear around the areas in which we don't have a clear answer, or even our independent auditors don't, to your point, like looking into our vendors, looking into the process to ensure that every vendor outside of referendum, that process was followed through, to see, those kind of things I would say we need to have as part of the scope in the forensic audit, aside from all the financial normal stuff that they're going to look for. But we are working with experts and legal counsel to think about what would that scope of that forensic audit be, considering that we're all kind of familiar with where were some of the issues with previous administration and how the business office conducted itself.
Can you share a bit more about that? Like, what were some of those issues that were problematic or that are...
Share again that I've shared since July?
Well, I mean, a specific, was there anything specific that happened where you're like, that's a red flag, and that beyond just like not great budgeting practices, or...
To me, that's a red flag.
No, for sure. But I mean...
That is the most concerning piece of it.
Well, for example, you found that there was an amendment to our food services contract last year that was unauthorized, allegedly, and you're trying to recoup...
Allegedly.
I think that's like examples like that. Like that's a very specific question mark.
Right. And we were very open with that. We said that we're going for the for the bond insurance because we feel that was wrongdoing. There was not a board authorization to do that. There was not a superintendent authorization. Even if there was, you still have to have board approval and have to go through the proper process. So again, we were very public about that as soon as we discovered it and realized that, hey, that person, we need to try to recoup that money for the district because this was not authorized. So that is something that we uncovered. And I would hope, like the forensic audit, our thinking would be look into other matters like that might have been previously prior to even, 24, 25, like previous years. So those would be kind of the things that I would like to see in the forensic audit.
Do you remember back in January at Glenfield Middle School, a parent got up and asked about the bond referendum and said, uh, it feels like it's a big ask to ask parents to vote yes on another tax raise when we just voted yes on this huge bond referendum. Is there a world where we could scale back the scope of the bond referendum and make this yes vote more palatable? Right? Like it just feels like we're asking for too much too soon again.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate. Again, I don't want to say I was not here for that whole process, but I certainly understand the need for it. And to be honest, we need more resources to help bring our buildings up to the to code. Not, I think we're okay with code, or else we'll have violations. But just to create a place, where our students and families could really just be meet all of our needs. Our infrastructure, our buildings are old, and we have to modernize them, or else it's going to cost us more and more money to maintain and do the maintenance. So I certainly understand why the bond referendum was needed, and grateful to the community that they approved it, because without it, I can only imagine. I mean, you're talking about major expenses: roofing, heating, cooling. Those are very expensive items. There would have been things I would have loved. I mean, that's neither here nor there to have seen included.
And where are we with all of those projects?
So again, and I'm not being at all disrespectful, we have shared 2 town halls updating on our bond referendum. We've also had committee of the whole meeting on that. We also provide an update every week on our website under bond referendum, all the updates on each of the projects, where they are, if they were delayed and why they were delayed. And then again, I believe next month, don't quote me on it, we're going to have another update during the Finance Committee and Facilities Committee of the whole, another update in terms of the work that's taken place with our bond referendum.
Let's talk about structural challenges. We have a new governor, Mikey Sherrill. What is something you would love to get a minute with her to communicate with regards to that 2% cap from the state, and how arguably that is like starving school districts, including Montclair?
Yeah, I think I've been very vocal about the need to talk to our elected officials, including, our governor, about rethinking, re-examining, reimagining how schools are funded in New Jersey. Because again, that 2% cap, when we know that inflation, I mean, right away, our staff salary alone increases by more than 2%. And gave everybody the record of information. Again, healthcare about 12%, 7% for transportation. So how do we keep up? Again, it requires us to tax and cut. And I think that's not good for not only our students, but that's also not good for the residents of New Jersey. And we have to be courageous enough to say, let's look at this again. I am optimistic with our new commissioner coming in, learning or getting information about some of the work that she did in her previous role, that perhaps this would be something that the administration would consider. Just go around, again, working with my superintendent colleagues to have those discussions and say, hey, we're all feeling this. How do we, collectively begin to ask those questions of Trenton and say, here's where schools need support. What can be done differently is certainly something that we're talking about and moving in that direction. And I also ask our community to also write a letter, make a phone call to your elected officials and say, hey, we'd like to learn more about how these schools are funded. What are your thoughts about that? Here's what we would like to see happen. Would be great.
What do you think about, there's been a lot of talk about pilot programs and the money that goes to the town through these development deals, and that the school should be entitled to some portion of that. A perspective on that?
Yeah, I do believe that the school should be entitled to a portion of that.
Yeah.
How would you
Yeah.
describe your relationship with the town right now? A metaphor, honestly. Like, how do you feel about it? Like, what does your gut say about how the town views the school district's issues right now and their role in supporting the school district?
Yeah, I don't honestly, I don't have clarity on that. I've been in this world of tremendous amount of focus and time spent, honestly, looking at our financial situation, trying to find a way out, that I've not had an opportunity to really engage with myself, much less anybody else. Um, Individually, some of them have reached out to me. I feel like they're supportive, and I'm very hopeful in our new partnership that we're developing, where there is going to be I don't know if it's a word, task force between some members of the township council and our board of education and my administration to look at some of those issues of like shared services. Hopefully, talk about opportunities for pilots, and if not, why not? Things of that nature. I know that individuals have reached out to me once Hackensack news broke out, and the town was able to give the school district $6 million so they would not have to lay off as many folks, And we did make a request of help from the township early on. When we informed them, the mayor was very supportive when we met with that committee to say, hey, think about our students, things of that sort. At that time, they felt they did not have the financial resources to be able to help us out. And again, I respect that. I can't force them to do that. Was I disappointed? Absolutely. We would have taken anything. We still would take anything to help us. But I do want to see that relationship strengthen. I feel like now I'm at a point where I have to go beyond this budget, and March 10th will be what it is, and I'm now having the breathing space to sort of reach out, work on this committee, and see honestly where that relationship lies. As I said before, we are interdependent. I firmly believe that on one another. I don't believe that we can have a strong community without having strong schools. I'm a firm believer in that. I don't care what individual says. I've lived long enough to see whether the impact is year 1 or year 5. We will feel those impacts. So I am eager to work in partnership with them, and I'm optimistic we will begin to develop those relationships and be able to have the opportunity to communicate and plan together.
We have significant transportation costs. Some of those costs or the majority of those costs are mandated because of the
I'm
Supreme
sorry, I was
Court.
taking a nap. What were you saying?
It's okay.
Yeah, I can handle it. I can take it.
You can take
I deserve it. I deserve it.
No, because I did say I forgive you. So if I said that and I meant it, I shouldn't bring it up. So I apologize. I'm paying attention now.
You can ride me. It's fine. It's fine. I can take it. Transportation. We have a significant transportation budget. A lot of that is because there's a Supreme Court order dating back to the late 60s mandating the integration of our schools, which led to busing and ultimately the magnet program. How do you balance the requirement to provide this level of transportation with the expense of it? You just said transportation costs go up 7% a year. We have few options in terms of where we can get our transportation from.
Mhm.
How do you deal with that?
That's certainly a challenge. I have to be very honest. I've yet to see a court order. So I'm still trying to understand exactly what we are required to do, especially considering the constraints that we're facing. Again, 70-80% is staffing. I just can't get rid of everybody, right? We're not going to be able to run schools. So we're going to have to look at other places to reduce and cuts, and transportation is not off the table. And I must say, having been an individual in all my career, probably since I was 19 years old, even as a undergrad student, just having a personal moral compass to fight for equity and inclusion, that is just in my blood. It was, I've said this over and over, one of the main things that attracted me to Montclair. I was like, magnet school system, this is genius. I'm going to be very honest, right? And I was like, I felt like this might have been the one place that found a solution, because I came from communities where intentionally or unintentionally was very segregated. Because the model was the closest school, sort of a neighborhood school, the closest school you live in, that's where you should go, reduces transportation and so forth. But not all schools are created equal. That's just a fact. So for me, I pushed against that because I wanted families, one, to stay in public schools, and I wanted families to have choice and opportunities, and hopefully by doing that, create a level of diversity in all areas. So again, just in reading and looking at Montclair, I was like, this is amazing. So I value the magnet system. I want to be very clear about that. I really do. I think it's what makes Montclair different. It's what makes Montclair special. And I think it is the essence of the general value of Montclair. So I will do all I can to preserve it. But at the end of the day, right, if we don't have the resources, that is why March 10th is so important, that I don't know if we will be able to if we continue down this path and don't have the resources that we need. So when I say everything's on the table, everything's on the table, unfortunately.
Yeah. And there's obviously already been cuts to the magnet system. And a lot of people think,
No, there haven't been cuts to the magnet system.
well, I mean, technology teachers at the technology school and things like that.
No, there hasn't been.
Well, my daughter goes to Watch On. They don't have a tech teacher anymore. And, it just feels like, and this is again just anecdotal, we haven't done a town-wide survey, but there's sentiment that the magnetization of our schools is eroding and has already started to erode.
Yeah.
I disagree. I disagree greatly with that in the sense that, and again, I look in these areas. I was very clear in the process of our cuts, sharing it with our administration to say, we value the magnet and we want to protect that. At no point did I feel like any of those cuts was jeopardizing that. So again, we can certainly revisit it, but I would disagree to say that it's eroding. I don't see any evidence of that.
And I don't think it's necessarily eroding over the last year or anything like that as a result. But when you look at what the magnet schools were when they began, there was a ton of federal money that was pumped into the district. There were several positions just to develop the curriculum.
Makes
there
sense.
was all sorts of stuff.
We were blue ribbon, for years, right?
It was serious.
We will be blue ribbon again.
And so I think what people are saying is like, yes, it's nice to call these magnet systems. It's nice that they can take a little special extra class in this or that or the other thing. But are they really like super special? Are they enough? Because back then, the busing initially was just forced busing. People went nuts. A lot of people pulled their kids out of the school district. Then they came up with a magnet system and it was like, oh man, like Nishawayne does this and Bradford does this and all of these special things. That over time, for the reasons that you've
and I'm sure as financial resources began to shrink, which happens everywhere, your resources are limited. I can see that.
So the question is like, is there going to be a way, I think, to
revitalize that?
Maybe rethink the way it works, like writ large. I don't know. Has that been something that you've talked about or that teachers have brought to you in any way, shape, or form?
No, I think it's because all of us have been, so concerned about. I mean, it's to the point where I just want people to understand, like, the urgency of it is like a staff gets paid twice a month, and everything leading up to that it worries me, right? That's how tight our cash flow is. So when you're in a position like that, it's very difficult, right? Your immediate thing is, we need to solve this. What can we do to make sure? I'm always been very honest to say now, honestly, I'm at a point where it has to be beyond that. Because again, we've done all that we can possibly do at this point. So those are where we're moving to have discussions about our magnet system, our educational services for our specialized population, students with IEPs, our ML students, right? As I said, we need to be instructionally focused. And that's what you're going to see in the next coming weeks and months as we close out this year and go into 26, 27. But again, all those ideas require resources. That's just a fact. It doesn't always have to be resources and human capital, but the resources to fully train and support teachers and school leaders. That takes time, that takes money. Although I will share my instructional vision on Wednesdays, a lot of stuff being shared on Wednesday. I'm also mindful that in order for that to be actualized, we're going to need some financial resources to make that happen.
Should we talk about walking tacos and slushy gate?
That's another bone I have to pick.
You can pick that one
with you.
Why?
I have to be very honest because that's all I need to be honest. I think that there's been, I want to side on perhaps misinformation regarding our food service, our new food service vendors and the offerings in schools. We hosted a town hall that you weren't at.
Well, I was there virtually.
Okay, virtually. But it's nothing like being in person because we got to sample the food and
We're supposed to go to the. I thought we were going to get.
Well,
to
you
go.
know what happens when we eat food at these meetings.
I know. It was actually great. I was glad I went. Honestly, I'm glad I went. So we answered questions and shared information with our families. Now, my old school district, they had walking tacos too. So ask your question. What would you like to know?
Well, it's been a minute since we've hired Sodexo, and initially we got your emails. There was some confusion and concern from the families. How is Sodexo addressing that?
We had a town hall,
Mm-hmm.
which is also recorded.
Actually, in the cafeterias, how are they addressing it on the town hall?
What do you mean? I don't. What? I guess I
Like
should know what the
nutritional
concerns are.
concerns.
Yeah, we shared all that. So the slushies are no food coloring. I mean, not food. No artificial coloring and all that stuff. They shared all that first. They're fruit juice that is mixed with ice and become and are slushies. So they're not the typical like 7-Eleven slushies that I do love occasionally.
I like a Coke Slurpee.
Yes, nothing like yes. Yeah, we should probably go get one after this. Well, probably after 5. So we've been very open and honest in terms of providing like the ingredients in the offerings that Sodexo provides. Again, there were folks there that asked questions and told me that, they had a better understanding now. So, and not to mention, they're also a lot of what they are doing, our previous food vendor also did.
Yeah.
So I just find it interesting that now,
Like what?
everything. I mean, even the walking tacos, and it's a better food option now. They also had the slushies machines. I'm not sure how often they use them, but the previous food vendor also had that. So again, I do recognize, as a parent, that is super important that especially the younger our children are, that we teach them healthy eating habits. Obviously, I could have benefited from that when I was a child. Healthy eating habits, right? And to try to promote that. But then also, I tell them there's also other families who are like, this is great. We support this. And we like the fact that my child is excited and the a la carte, I will, restrict that. Even those cookies are not, I don't want to say they're not real cookies because they are, but take it from a cookie expert. They are not the cookies that I enjoy. They're whole grain and things of that sort. So within,
Maybe we'll come and try it
You should.
next visit.
Can we do like
We'll
a?
do like a
Yeah, I would love a taste test. I might take a nap afterwards, but
that's okay because I won't, that I'll allow that. But even again, those of us that were there in person, went through the food line, ate the food. I can certainly attest to the fact, just tasting it, it was good, but it was certainly like whole grain and very healthier version.
Mm-hmm.
So you've been happy with them. They've been an improvement.
To be honest, it's not so much that I'm happy with them. I get tremendous. I got a video from one of our students. Well, I didn't, but the grandfather did, who shared it with me, talking about how he is so excited, and really loves the food at schools. I've had families reach out to me and say, my child is asking to buy school lunch, thank you. They love the change. So that's what pleases me, is that families are appreciating it. So I'm pleased with the service that they're providing thus far. I think we've made it very clear, and Montclair has made it very clear that we want to have high standards for our children. There, even out of that, a wellness committee, which is part of the food service agreement. They talked to some of the parents that are interested in doing it and are moving in that direction, so that those who want to be involved are as involved as possible.
We're in 22 Valley Road right now. Could this something change with this building as a result? Like, could this building no longer be a school property?
Why do you want to buy it?
Maybe. I don't know. We were talking about potentially.
We need an office.
No, but they're talking about so this came up in our conversation with Stephen Marks, because they might sell some of their buildings, like the police department is like all messed up and they need a new police department.
You mean up here?
Yeah, that one. And then across the street from it, well, it's old and 1890s. And then across the street from it, PSE&G has to redevelop that substation.
Wow.
So there's all this stuff that's happening. People are selling and moving and figuring out how to finance it. I'm wondering if that's on the table. I know you said everything's on the table, but are there specific buildings that you think would be good candidates for redevelopment that would provide you with, I don't know, $10 million.
That would be great.
I mean,
If somebody offered us $10 million, I would certainly encourage the board to accept it.
yeah.
Yeah. It might be worth more than 10. So let me not settle. It might be worth more than $10 million, but whatever the value. Again, if we can do that and eliminate or reduce cuts and be able to, I'm certainly open to it. Where would we go? I'll worry about that later.
You probably could find extra office space somewhere, I imagine.
Or an existing where it doesn't have to, cost us additional resources. So, we can figure that out.
Does the district have underutilized spaces at this point?
In some places, yeah. I don't know if it would be enough to house all of us. My main concern would be the business office and HR, to be honest. Everybody else, we can figure out what the heck to do. So I certainly am open to that, and would work to find us place in existing, whether we're all in separate places or whatever. I'm certainly open to that. If that means that we won't have to cut services, I will certainly be willing to do it. I can work out of my car, coffee shop. I'm not being...
There's a buyer for 22 Valley,
Not just any buyer, the highest
The
bidder.
highest bidder.
That'd be the perfect way to help us out of this situation. Again, I would certainly have to get my board's approval, but that would be something I'd be willing to recommend if that's feasible.
We've been talking to so many people about schools, as you have, over the last few months. And one of the themes that keeps coming up is to be a leader in a district like ours with all the challenges, you really need to be courageous, renegade. What are some of those other terms? Really entrepreneurial,
Innovative.
innovative. What are the moments, Mrs. Turner, where you feel you have to be most courageous?
Every day, every single day, every single day, every single minute. Just being very honest.
And to what extremes are you willing to go to really right this ship?
I don't know what you mean by what extremes, but whatever it takes that aligns with my values and ethics to ensure that our students and teachers have what they need to provide a world-class education. I'm willing to do just about anything that aligns with my values and ethics. So yes, one of them, like I said, giving up this building.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter to me.
We're working virtually anyway these days.
Yeah, we work from home.
Yeah, I feel very strongly about that.
Really quick question about timeline, because it kind of came up just now. Some would say this is not, we get this money, let's say this year, we get all the money. Yes. But it's going to play out probably over 10 years in order to get to a point where we have fought all of the systemic problems. We have a budget that's going to be balanced. And what's your timeline looking like for righting this ship?
5 years.
5 years.
All right.
That's what I've committed to, and I would say 5 years.
All right, that's better than.
And I don't think that's impossible. I think that's very possible. Again, we're going to have to make tough decisions along the way. We're going to have to make adjustments as we gather more information, just about everything, our community enrollment. But I wholeheartedly believe in, and this is not, a pipe dream, that no matter what happens March 10th, right, I have the resolve and the commitment to help see us through that. I think what would make things a lot easier for that is, no matter how we feel about, the special election, is if we work together as a community, right? I always said you can always disagree about everything. It's how you disagree. And I've always said the measure of our character is how we behave and how we resolve conflict when we're in disagreement. Tells a lot about our character, not in times where we agree or in times when life is easy, but when those challenges are presented, is what do we choose to do? What do we choose to say? How do we choose to say that? To me, tells a lot more about an individual than at times when we are in agreement. So I would ask the community to hold us accountable, but extend grace. And many have been great supporters. And as I said, willing to help in almost any kind of area, whether it's research. And I'm so grateful to that. And I'm not accustomed to that, honestly. Oftentimes people say, let me know how I can help. And once you do, they're like, oh, I don't really have, that time or whatever it is. This is a really giving, supportive community. I think there are a few individuals who might try to paint a different picture, but I have enough level of discernment to see that that's not representation of the whole community. And I wish sometimes that, the emails and the letters I get, even through snail mail, which is wonderful. The other day I got a handwritten note from a parent that was so meaningful. that sometimes you don't see that because those may not be the individuals who come to a public meeting, or it may not be the individuals who are on social media, or the individuals who are writing in to a letter to the editors, but they exist. And it's because of those individuals that I'm still here. And I'm firmly committed to help us see us through this challenging time.
You bring up like the research and stuff that people have done. We've spent some time with the folks at Impact and I've read their most recent report about monitors and previous reports about. Can you talk a little bit about your working relationship with that community group and what potentially you're doing as a result of their work that's different?
Yeah, I find them to be very respectful. Again, I'm never looking that we have to be in agreement. I think that iron sharpens irons. Sometimes that somebody has to present a different challenge and a different perspective, but they've been very open and honest and say, hey, here's what we found. If you want to talk about it, here's what we're going to release. Do you have any thoughts about it? So I really appreciate that and the work that they're doing to provide, again, this objective information to the community. So I see great value in that and appreciate the work that they're doing.
Okay.
Them and many other, and because I don't want to feel like I'm shouting out one.
Yeah.
But there's so many. I have a very small transportation work committee that I'm sure I drive crazy because I'm so busy, but they're so committed to doing hours and hours of research and work. We have right now we're putting together our finance committee where we've had so many people apply or throw their names in there to help serve in that on that committee. So that level of support and accountability, I welcome it, and I'm grateful that it exists.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.